Holy shit. Like, I welcome everyone. This is the Star Wars Generations podcast. It's me and Alex. Erin's not able to join us right at this moment, but I'm sure she'll be back pretty soon for another episode. We're going to be talking about this show a lot, but
Yeah.
let's just kind of do this is just our quick initial reactions. Me and Alex. I don't. Wow.
I
Like,
sat there for 10 minutes in stunned silence after it ended.
if anyone had, if, for some reason, if any of you are the sort who like needed to stop it immediately, like I wanted to talk to the people I watched it with, so I hit stop immediately. And someone then told me, Alex, you were the one in my case. Go listen to all of the music over the credits. There's no post-credit scenes, but trust me, the music is worth it. I won't spoil that one
Yeah.
thing yet. But I gotta say, we knew the bar for this season was gonna be so high, and frankly, one of the things that made the first season of Andor so good that I think separated it from a lot of the not only Star Wars Disney Plus shows, but the Marvel Disney Plus shows as well, is it stuck the landing. And I really wasn't
Big
sure,
time.
especially because episodes 8, 9, and 10, 8, 7, 8, 9 were so good. I was like, where does it go from here? And the fact is, they found a way to go even better and even higher. And yeah, I
Yeah.
think this is just. This is now up there with The Wire as I think one of the two or three just flat out, not best science fiction, not best Star Wars, just best television shows I've ever seen.
Yeah. I was talking to my friends last night and I said, this is just the best television like I've ever seen. Like, just sentence ends there. Like, I mean, it was,
Mm-hmm.
I had taken notes, just a few notes for our podcast today. And one of the things I wrote on here was this show improves Star Wars as a whole. It elevates everything. It elevates Rogue One, A New Hope, Rebels. It makes the sacrifices that occur in the original trilogy even more meaningful. I mean, it is. I didn't really like. I remember when Rogue One came out, that I was like, "Damn, that's a really special movie." Like, kind of a shame it's just a one-off. And they found a way to like take that lightning in a bottle they had captured and then like expand it. I mean, this show was just
Yeah.
I can't even describe it.
It really was. You know, a lot of people had said that you should finish this show and then go immediately into Andor. And unfortunately, because of just timing
In a Rogue
issues,
One.
let me take it again. You know, a lot of people had said you should watch Andor and then go immediately into Rogue One. And unfortunately, just due to life circumstances and like, I wasn't able to do that. But I woke up this morning. One of the first things I did was turn on Rogue One, and they're right. It just added, you know, the whole time I was looking at Andor feeling so off balance and so torn and not sure what he should do, and thinking about the fact that like he lost Marva, he lost Luthen, who, as much as he disagreed and disliked Luthen at times, meant so much to him. He had lost Bix, he had lost so much, and yeah, I just Andor hit a lot differently. Rogue One hit a lot differently. I then actually went right from Rogue One into the first few minutes of A New Hope, and you're right, that hit differently. I, I think this is going to be one of those things that is both. It makes Star Wars so much better, and I think for us Star Wars fans, it is just the pinnacle of awesome things. But also, frankly, and I've heard from these people already, but I want more folks to find it this way. I think for people who don't like Star Wars or don't like science fiction or think it's just not for them, but they enjoy political thrillers, they enjoy action spy thrillers, they just enjoy they hate being in the political and social and cultural situation we are right now and want some catharsis about how it could be better. This is the show for them. I mean, it
Hmm.
really just walked that line
Hmm.
so perfectly.
Yeah, and like I think that what was interesting in these final three episodes specifically, I was actually momentarily I was surprised that in the final arc of Andor, the first of the three episodes, it does not include him for even a second.
Yeah.
It's all the Luthen and Clea backstory, and we finally get to like understand how like where like what Luthen's background was, where Clea came from, and it like I like want to go back and immediately restart Andor now because I want to look at their relationship through that lens of like Clea being raised kind of as his daughter, like as this found individual, and I was like, oh my god, this makes it so much more devastating.
Yeah. Well, especially because it's the exception that proves the rule. Because one thing we see about Luthen, I think he's one we're going to be talking about a lot, both today, but also with Aaron and probably with sometimes in future episodes, because the character is so morally complicated and so
Hmm.
rich. Um, one of the things that we see, and we see that he taught Cassian, is never get sentimental about the people you work with because you may have to kill them. He has that entire rebel group of 50 rebel soldiers who he throws away and leads them right to their death because it's not going to help him. He the guy who is in the ISB agent who has been a turncoat working for him this whole time. Young, that's his name. He, Young comes to him and says, "Look, I've burned myself, so because I've learned this incredibly important information, I'm going to tell it to you, and I need you to get me out." And Luthen says, "Yeah, I'm going to get you out," and then kills him, just flat out kills him.
After he mentions his wife and daughter too.
And which is, as I say, what he taught to Cassian, because it's exactly what Cassian does to Tivik
Yep.
at the start of Rogue One. And she is the one exception. He not only does he work to make sure that she escapes, he intentionally sets it up so that he will be caught instead of her.
Yeah.
And then of course when she goes back for him, even there she's not being sentimental. She's going back to, yes, prevent him from a life of torture, but also to make sure that the Empire can't get out of him what it needs to get out of him.
And he looked
Yeah.
so peaceful when she disconnected him.
Yeah.
He looked the first time I'd seen him it was because he's had this fake smile throughout the entire show through first season 1 and season 2, and it felt like when she disconnected him, that was the one and only time we saw a genuine smile come across his face. Like, I'm finally at peace now.
Yeah. So let's kind of start with him because I'm seeing a lot of stuff online about like, oh, he was such a hero, he's so great, we love him so much. What's your kind of final feelings about Luthen?
I think that at his core, he definitely was like a heroic figure, but I mean, he employed a lot of he walked the line almost to me between Saw Gerrera and the mainstream rebellion. Like, he did a lot of really kind of guerrilla type things. He scrimped and scrimmed to just get by in the beginning in order to kind of build up this store he had to more to get information to and from the rebellion. But I think that at the end of the day, I see him as kind of almost like a necessary evil, but it has to exist. He kind of did the dirty work that Mon Mothma just didn't want to do, or some of these other characters who were equal. I mean, Mon Mothma is equally, if not of greater importance, but she doesn't get to the rebellion if it's not for Luthen. And Andor doesn't get the training he needs, and probably a lot of what happened, the rebellion doesn't win unless Luthen does everything he does. But it doesn't make it all morally correct. But it just opens up that kind of conversation of how do you win a war against this giant opponent? I mean, he even said in his great speech, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but something along the lines of, "I'm forced to fight my enemy, using their tactics, basically."
Yeah.
And he's right. And it was, I see. I mean, I don't think he was. I think he was fairly cruel sometimes to Clea. I think he was cruel towards others. He was very paranoid and untrusting, but he also successfully completed what had to be done.
Yeah. I think he is the character who troubles me the most, and I think that's the point. Because I was reminded recently, I don't want to just assume that this show is about the most modern of current events. But I think that a theme throughout history has been that when people commit acts of violence, especially against civilians or in ways that we think of as not, just war or something like that, we are very quick to judge them unless they did it for a side that we think is morally valuable, or especially ones that wins. People remember Nelson Mandela as the great peacemaker, and he was. He was also the one who decided that the ANC needed to turn to violence towards what would be, by a lot of definitions, terrorism. Innocent people got blown up by the bombs and the attacks that Nelson Mandela helped to put in place. And that violence helped lead to the situation that led to him being much more peaceful, that helped lead to the end of apartheid in South Africa. Dare I say it, the actions of groups like Hamas or other things like that, which I think a lot of us, myself included, are deeply troubled by. But I also recognize the horrible evil that they are fighting in terms of the oppression. Which I say this person is half Jewish. I'm not trying to be, I'm going to cut all that
Right.
out. Start that again. You can look at groups like Hamas, at groups like any kind of group that is fighting for freedom against oppression. And we can get into questions of like, is that oppression? Is that oppression that we understand and agree with? That we don't. The IRA, is another one. Like, there's so many there's around the world where I think it's I'm not saying that I think all of them are completely justified. I'm not saying that I think Luthen is completely justified. I'm saying I think that for the most part, we sit in ivory towers and pass judgment on this is an okay way for people who are facing horrible situations that we don't,
Right.
to respond, and these aren't ways. And Luthen is there to kind of force us to question that, to force us to say, like, again, it's not to say that therefore everything is justified. It's to say, like you said, I hate that Luthen killed those people. I hate that Luthen threw away those rebel soldiers. I hate that, the bombs that he and Clara set off when Clara's a kid on Naboo.
Mm-hmm.
Those almost definitely killed innocent people. Like, they were attacking military targets, but
Yeah.
there were people around. They killed innocent people. That was a terrorist bombing by almost any definition. But it moves forward toward the end of the horrible, evil, oppressive empire.
And that was, I will just note, in that Naboo scene, it was interesting because Clea was like ready to finally like click the button and do it herself, and he like last second pulled it away from her because he like, again, she was the only one. Clea was the only one that Luthen like wanted to protect to the end, and like he like knew what had to be done, but like didn't want Clea to get her hands dirty as much as possible.
Well, it was weird because he wanted her to make the choice. He wanted to know that she would be willing to push the button, but then he wanted to.
Exactly. And I found the exact quote. The exact quote is, "I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them." Right. And that's, I think, like, to him, whether it's ego or not, that was his burden. He's like, you can't, which is, again, very Saw Gerrera thinking of like, right, you can't win a war through only peaceful methods. And like, I think that, like, I don't know, Luthen really clearly he pissed off a lot of the people in the Rebel Alliance. Mm-hmm. But I loved Andor's speech, basically calling out some of the rebel leaders and being like, Did you know him? Did you meet him? How dare you? How dare you speak ill of this man? He was not perfect. He was actually a lot of bad, probably more bad than good. But if it wasn't for him, none of this happens. And I thought that was a really apt description. And it was very cool to see Andor like stand up to them in that way.
I think the only thing that I found troubling about it, and trust me, there's a lot of other things we're going to talk about, Cassian's story, so much else. I didn't like for a long time. I have felt that like they were kind of saying like, Saw is off on his own, and Luthen is still working with them. But in a lot of ways, Luthen is worse. Like, Luthen does things that even Saw is like, oh, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And it felt like at the end of this, they were kind of heroizing Luthen, especially with that speech from Cassian, while Saw was still being treated as, oh, but he's too far. He goes too much. And I've certainly seen that reaction a lot from fans, and I think that is, I think if I'm charitable, I think what Gilroy was trying to get to was just that they see it this way because Luthen is still working on the inside, whereas Saw isn't. But among other things, one of the things, again, I got from watching Rogue One after this was, I was thinking about all the ways in which Luthen had kept everyone so compartmentalized and made sure that no one trusted each other. Mm. And so Clara felt that like she wouldn't be trusted and welcomed, and in a lot of ways she wasn't. And like a lot of the council didn't want to trust Cassian, let alone Luthen. Of course Saw is paranoid as hell, and I can understand why Saw's like, I want nothing to do with you people. I want to do this on my own. And I wish the show had been at least a little more understanding towards Saw. But like that's just a tiny complaint in a much larger.
No, that's fair. I mean, like, and we only really got like that one hologram interaction, which actually, for those, again, I mean, we do a book club, y'all, for our listeners, for our, let's say that again, for our subscribers who listen to our book club episode, we did the Mask of Fear recently, and they literally said like Mom Mothma said Mask of Fear in the show, like the exact line, and it was after her. Saw via hologram and Bill Organa had like a meeting together, and they were talking. They kind of finally broke, and it was interesting to compare that in my head to the book where they first got together and were going to try and work together. And I'm curious how the next two installments in that trilogy kind of show the breakdown of that relationship to get to the point that we see it at in Andor.
Right, because a large part of that book is both Andor. Sorry, a large part of that book is both Bail Organa and Mon Mothma coming to realize they can't just do this as senators. They have to work with someone like Saul.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Um,
what else do you want to?
Yeah, I just have a few little I know we're going to kind of do just a broader strokes today. So I have a few more bullet points here.
Go for it.
Daedra.
Oh,
Poor. I always feel bad for her. Like I don't, but she got at least what she deserved. Like, but it to me, she was such an amazing metaphor for like you can do everything for the Empire. You can give yourself to it. You can feed the machine. Like you can feed the tyranny and fascism. But in the end, no matter how loyal you are, you're expendable. You're just going to be thrown to the side. I mean, you think about it. The people who are the biggest hands in this show. I mean, Pendergast ends up killing himself. Daedra is sent. It looks like to Narkino 5, the same prison that Andor was in. Obviously, in Rogue One, Krennic is killed by his own just weapon, and it's just all of these people who like thought they had power, thought they had influence, disposable.
Yeah. And like I didn't think it was supposed to actually be an Arcana 5. Among other things, we were shown that mostly as a men's only prison.
Oh, good point. Fair point.
A woman's version, but also like, and they didn't say on program, which I'm kind of glad that it would felt.
But they blinked the floor. So I think the floor was hot.
I think so too. And I think what it told me is like if you go to a lot of American prisons that were built at the same time,
yeah,
they look almost exactly the same.
Fair point.
Kind of so that I got the sense that definitely it is an Imperial prison. And yeah, much as I had been hoping for one of two things: either A, that she gets promoted and assigned to the Death Star, or B, that like the final thing we hear is we see her being choked again and her body fall, and we just hear the voiceover saying apology accepted. But no, this was even better because this was her having to come to her having to realize and live with knowing that exactly that she put her trust in the Empire even when Cyril was trying to convince her not to. And it was just, someone else came along who was even better at the game than she was. And the meme of, and I have no idea where it came from. I don't know if it's direction or just the actor came up with it because the actor is so good. But that single, like, Krennic putting one finger on her forehead while the camera looks right at both of them was just such a ridiculous but perfect moment that I'm sure is going to become a total meme forever now.
First of all, the cinematography in these 3 episodes was unbelievable, but like Krennic walking in behind her and you couldn't see his face, but you just felt his presence. Like, it was kind of scary. Like, I mean, like not that Krennic wasn't kind of menacing in the past, but like I always saw him as just this firebrand and like a smaller shadow to Tarkin, Thrawn, these other bigger leaders. And he threw his weight around in that scene when he was interrogating Daedra. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I'm not a rebel spy. And he goes, well, you missed your calling then. Like he was just cruel and just, again, it's Castro. And like, and even when all that was happening, her last act was to like try and help the Empire find Clea.
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, dude, loyalty to the end, I guess, girl. But you did, Jesus.
I mean, this is taking what I think is generally a good concept and putting it in a really weird way, but impact over intentions, like that was whole Krennic's point was like, whatever you intended, what you did was what the best rebel spy probably couldn't have done. Which is also hilarious because he's not realizing how much rebel spies actually had to do with it. But and I think it was a perfect statement about who Krennic is because he is the classic psychological description of a bully.
Yep.
He seeks out situations where he is the most powerful. When power is taken away from him, he whines to the people. He doesn't try to take it back. He goes to someone like Vader and goes, "Wow, wow, wow, this isn't fair." And he cowers like, a little coward in the corner when the people with actual power, like Vader or Tarkin, exert it towards him. And it's just, he is exactly the kind of middle management that a fascist empire produces. And like, we know the Emperor wanted people fighting with each other, and that this is exactly what it gets.
Yeah, and it was fun. I remember with their interaction with Pendergast, where Pendergast was like, "Save your speech for Palpatine. Like, save like all your ramblings for like I don't want to hear it." And Krennic like knew that Pendergast was screwed and was just like, "All right, man, good luck." Like basically first to the finish then. And Pendergast ending to me was I like I was a little not bummed it was off screen because it was obviously graphic, but like I was like first I was like, oh, off screen, but then I was like, actually seeing like his subordinate like just that subtle hand motion to stop the stormtroopers from going in and like just
Mm-hmm.
knowing what had happened, I was like, wow, that was kind of an incredible ending for him.
The fact that this show made me feel for just half a second a moment of sympathy towards both Dedra and Pendergast.
Yep.
Um, like I sent to my friend who was texting as I watched, like that is incredible writing
Mm-hmm.
because they are both evil, terrible people. And I still in both of those moments was like, it's kind of like I think getting your face eaten by a leopard sounds terrible. And I don't, the people who voted for the leopards eating faces party and then get their own faces eaten, like there's a certain part of like you should have seen this coming, but also I still am like that looks terrible. I'm sorry for you.
But it
Um
means it was successfully written villains
yeah.
because if you feel for them in some level, like obviously it's not the same at all, but like it's similar to like it's like the Thanos idea of like you feel like maybe he's slightly right, and like with these characters like you feel slight emotional connection to them. Versus like
Mhm.
a straight evil villain is just not as interesting anymore. Um,
To me the point of a villain should be to make a part of you think if I say this especially as someone who with a lot of privilege. Maybe it's different for others, but I think for someone in a comfortable position in the world like I am, I want villains that make me and people like me think, wow, if I'm not careful, I could become that. That
right.
I can understand why she makes the first step she does, and I can see how that leads to it, and I can understand how someone who doesn't understand that can make all those same choices, and that's why we have to stop. And that's why I hope people can watch this and be like, oh, okay, I need to make different choices
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm. So we have a little bit of time. I'm going to pop over to another character,
go for
K2.
it.
Real
Oh,
funny.
so good.
Also, horror movie scene in the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
I had read that they cut. There was more of that they ended up cutting for time, but like that was that was like scary. That was actual horror. Like holding up his body, just being full of blaster bullets coming down the hallway. Like I did not have
Yup.
K2 getting his own hallway scene on my bingo card, but that was one of the scariest ones I've seen.
And there was a moment where, and again, I was sending this to Paul, my friend who's been a host of this podcast and been a guest a bunch of times. He's a hardcore poker player. He's taught me a lot. He's a professional. And there are times when I play, I am purely irrational. And 8 times out of 9, he will win. But 1 times out of 9, I will win. And he will just get so upset because the odds say that I should not have done that. And it should not have worked for me. We'll work 1 out of 9. That's how the odds work. But still, like, and I messaged him about that scene where K2 is like, I can't believe you people are doing these dumb plays in this gambling game they're playing, which I was calling uh, um, Dominocker, because it's kind of like half dominoes, half poker, but with sabacc. And I mentioned this, and he was like, "Yeah, I sympathize with K2O in K2SO in that moment." But more than anything, you said he was funny. He brought so much levity, but never in a way that felt like it was breaking the overall tension and pathos and
Right.
darkness of the show. Like it didn't feel like comic relief. It just felt like this is a funny moment among people in a deeply horrifying situation.
Yeah, I mean, he like wrecked all those people. Like when he started his rampage with Imperial officers saying, "Are you here? Are you here with us?" And he went, "No," and then just like threw him off of a cliff or off a bridge. And at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
rampage, he went, "I cleared a path.
Yeah.
You're welcome." I just, oh, he was so good. Um, and should we talk about the one of the biggest reveals in the show, Matthew?
You mean that while mostly avoiding dumb tropes, the Gilroys did fall into one dumb trope at the very end?
I don't think it was that dumb. But I understand. Like I saw very mixed reviews on the internet, and I understand like where you're coming from in it.
So just
For
to
our
be clear,
listeners
we're
who might be
talking, I assume,
unaware,
about Bix having a baby at the end.
yes,
And I just like being a parent is great. I am 2 months away from it. My wife is pregnant right now. I celebrate people who want to be parents. I celebrate people who decide not to be parents for whatever way and whatever choices they make about their bodies and their pregnancies, etc. But to me, the problem with a trope is when it's lazy. And it felt like at this point, it is such a trope to say, oh, a woman survives when her husband doesn't. How do we show that the husband lives on in her life and in her memory. I know will give her a child that he probably never knew about, or if he did, he will still never see. And Star Wars has literally done that already, and they did it beautifully in the
Rebels.
relationship between in Rebels. Yes, thank you. That Hera has Kanan's child, and he lives on with her and becomes a character who we come to know and love in later things, especially in Ahsoka. And like they were in that relationship, and that makes total sense for them. And for Bix, it just felt like it's like fridging, and like the bury your gaze thing. That like it's not a big deal, and I'm just kind of going into this rant. Forgive me, I'm going into this rant because you brought it up, but like that was one moment that I was like, oh come on, guys, you could have done better. Like it's just that it's been done so many times, and there was literally nothing in the world to let us know it was coming.
That's fair. I mean, I totally like, see your viewpoint there. I think for me, it kind of hammered home a few things, like it connected a few things to me. Like one is that like it made her choice to leave. We talked about it last week, and we went back and forth on like she shouldn't be choosing for somebody else and like stuff like that. But to me, she like basically this reinforces that she had to choose the rebellion for him because Andor would have never ever like chosen the rebellion if he knew he had a kid.
Right.
And I think it just adds a little bit to the psychology of like what Biggs was doing there and like why she made the choices she did. But the bigger thing to me that I thought like just hit for me was that like she's revealed like holding this baby, kind of looking at a sunrise. Also, if you look at a side by side of that and Jin and Cassian as the Death Star is destroying Scarif, they look identical. The clouds are designed in such a way to kind of look like the same explosion, like it's kind of like a side by side.
It was intentional. It was incredible. Everything about the shot was great.
But my thought was, I think again, thought back to Luthen's speech where he said, "I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see," and he kind of passed it on to Andor, and like, yeah, it kind of hit it over the head a little bit, but like, quite literally, he was burned alive by the Death Star, did all this for the rebellion. For a sunrise for his child he never knew, for a sunrise, a child he'll never see. So like, I understand that it is a trope that has been overdone in cinema. It was already been done in Star Wars directly with Hera and Kanan. And like, sure, I think that like you could have gone through that entire montage and just cut away at the montage and been done. But it didn't bother me. Like, I felt emotional for it. I'm also just an emotional guy, and so I was just feeling it. And I was like, damn, I don't know. It just it tugged at my heartstrings in a certain way, but I do understand the critique that you were presenting very much.
Yeah, and I'll just say I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeing it the way you did, and I think it was a powerful moment to be sure, and I think the interpretation that you just put on it makes complete and total sense.
Right.
And it probably again, if I hadn't seen this and also kind of thought about this kind of trope a lot, it probably wouldn't bother me as much as it did. I think for me, it's that what you said there about like that it gives this meaning to, that Cassian now knows that Cassian doesn't know, but that we know that there's someone who gets to see the sunrise that Cassian doesn't get to see. And my response is, but there is already. It's Bix.
Right.
And so to say that Bix has to have a child for that to happen, it feels like it really minimizes her story.
That's fair.
It makes the woman's story about that she gets to be the person who carries the life of his child instead of it just being Bix gets to do it. So yeah, that's my only thought there. And honestly, like when people said they teared up about it, I was like, yeah, it's fine. But I was already tearing up because of B2. Because the way I cheered, I literally was like, yes, B2 is there. He's okay.
He's okay. I know. And I will say too, just regardless of child or not, the decision that Tony and Gareth Bale, the director of Rogue One, had made to not have Jin and Cassian kiss at the end of the Rogue One, which was for some reason a hot button issue at the time. I never got the impression they should really kiss each other, but I know that people were like, oh, they should have kissed before they died. But again, this show reinforces that decision that was made 10 years ago, of like, there was one person on Cassian's mind, and it was probably Bix as he was dying.
No, I don't think that's the case at all.
You don't think about Bix at all?
I think he might have been, but I think he was in that moment with Jin. And I think
fair.
People can love multiple people over the course of their lives.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, I agree with you that I think there shouldn't have been a kiss, and frankly, while I'm not one of them, I know there's lots and lots of people who do ship Jin and Cassian really hard, and apparently there's a lot of evidence for it in the novelization.
Oh,
But also, just
interesting.
watching the movie again, I do think there's a lot of like potential there for it.
Sure.
I am happy with the interpretation that they're just friendly and colleagues and that they're linked in this incredibly important moment that like I like the I think it's important to understand that there can be very deep soul connection relationships that aren't necessarily romantic.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do think that like the fact that Bix lives on and whether or not she has a kid or not, to me doesn't in any way she left. She did it for him, but she did walk out of his life. And I think
Hmm.
for him to accept that, move on, and then fall pretty hard for this person he's having this incredible,
That's
intense
fair. Yeah.
experience with also makes total sense.
No, I see that. No, for sure, for sure. I was just thinking of along the lines of like, I don't know. I just thought that again, like the decision to not kiss, it just adds another layer to the genius of it. I thought, but you're right, Matthew.
Mm. Sorry, I don't mean to shout you down on that one at all.
No,
Like,
no,
I
no,
think,
no, no, no. I'm happy. This is why I like
yeah.
talking with you. I like having different opinions. Last two things I wanted to mention here. They're both very brief. What do you think about? Well, I guess two things related to Clea. One, are you a believer in the Clea and/or sister conspiracy, or are you absolutely a non-believer in that?
Um, I think we've been given literally zero reason to believe it.
Okay.
And I think that stuff that Gilroy said also now further confirms it because he has said that like people wanted to know what happened to the sister. People wanted he left a couple of other like dangling strings, and what he said was the whole point was, no, we're not gonna make the universe that small. We're not gonna say like she comes back around. The whole point is that this is why he is clinging to the rebellion so hard because all of his life has been about him being taken away from people or them being taken away from him.
Right. Yeah. For a brief moment, like at the beginning of the Luthen episode, I thought that like Luthen was like on Cassian's planet and that like that was his sister who had escaped. And then like obviously it goes on and I'm like, oh wait, no, that doesn't make any sense. But like for a brief second, I was like, damn, wait, is this possible? But then I agree that like I was thinking at the same time, like it would just make the universe small. Like not everyone has to be related to everyone else, and that kind of minimizes the impact of it all. And
Mm-hmm.
having that long lost sister is what fuels him so heavily.
Yeah.
I would like to see a Clea spinoff though. I would not be mad at like a one season, just what is she doing during the rebellion or like what's she up to? Because she was the only like all of these characters were introduced, like Luthen and Daedra and Cyril, all these characters. They were all important, whatever. They all died except for Daedra and Clea. And I have seen rumblings of everything from what if Thrawn employs Daedra in the upcoming, his attempt to retake the Empire? What if Clea gets her own spinoff? I don't know how I feel about all these things, but it's just interesting that like their stories are kind of left open to be
Mm-hmm.
continued if Disney chooses to do so.
Yeah, I'd love to see more from Clara. I'd love to see more from Val. I definitely thought there was like
Yes.
a possible spark with those two.
Oh, Val would
I
be
think
yeah.
that gets in some problematic issues, especially after the death of Cinta. But
Mm-hmm.
and that's not like there's nothing wrong. Your loved one dies, you move on to someone else. But there's also just like the woman of color dies, and now she's that white partner. Again, I'm not saying it's a veto. There's very much more complications there. But yeah, I would love to see more of their stories. I think probably if nothing else, we'll get them in books.
Yeah.
And comics. But I mean, both of those actors are incredible.
Incredible.
Frankly, I was thinking about it. Like, who would you nominate for an Oscar from this show? Because
Oh my God.
part of it was like you mentioned how Cassian wasn't in the first episode of tonight, episode 10 at all. There was a number of episodes in which he is not the main character by any means. He's a person who's there, but like he rescues Mon Mothma, but that's Mon Mothma's episode. He goes to Gore, but that is an episode of Cyril and Dedra and the people of Gore. Like, who do you nominate for Best Actor, Best Actress for this show?
It's really interesting you say that because for most of the season, I was like Genevieve O'Reilly, who plays Mon Mothma. I'm like supporting actress, like should be like a shoe in, but then like now like Elizabeth Dulau, is that how you say it?
I think so. The woman who plays
Dulau, the one who
Clara.
plays Clea. I mean, she has a real case for supporting actress as well. I don't think I like Luthen's. Don't get me wrong, Luthen's performance was really powerful, but it was it was like smaller moments. I don't think there was enough of a breath there compared to Genevieve and Elizabeth to like to do Best Actress. But I mean, I could see many of the actors in this show going up for Emmys because this was. I mean, it was just there was not a single bad acting performance in my opinion.
Yeah. All of them were on point. I think I really was blown away by Stellan Skarsgård. I think if I'm naming an actor, like they're all actors, but that's the way the categories break down. I probably put the guy who plays Cyril first, and then Stellan Skarsgård second, and then Diego Luna third. But they're all very, very close.
Yeah, I can't remember. Hold on, Cyril. Just so we have it, Cyril actors. Cyril's name, Kyle Soller
Kyle Soller.
or
Thank you.
Soler, Solleer. I mean, he was spectacular as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just, yeah. Yeah. Very last thing I've written down here is just a little Easter egg I noticed that I really appreciated, a little nod towards Rebels, which they did without introducing Hera or Chopper the characters, which I almost kind of appreciate a little bit. But as the ISB is sweeping Luthen's store, they come across the stone from Lothal with the hands that is in the Rebels episode that opens the world between worlds, the one that Ezra studies with the help of Sabine. And I really appreciated that, like, they found a way to kind of nod towards Rebels even more without directly like bringing in, Hera, Ezra, those characters. Because like there were times where like I wanted to see someone from Phoenix Squadron, or I wanted to see the Emperor for just a brief minute, and they gave us none of it. They like Tony stuck to his guns and said we're not doing any cameos. They did no cameos at all.
Yeah. And like I wish they'd mentioned one or two of those things. Like I think it would have been perfectly fine for them to mention that, like, oh hey, what do we do if we can't find a way into Saw Gerrera? Well, this person named Jyn Erso has been, mentioning Hera or something like that as the Rebel Squadron, Phoenix Squadron. But you're right. I think I was fine with it. It was a completely complete story on its own. Also, just to give one more like crazy Easter egg,
please.
And I only know this because some people know Arabash, the like galactic basic language translations, but the name of the hospital, it was named after the Chancellor of the High Republic in the High Republic books. I think her name is Lena So.
That's cool.
That was just like such a great pull of like, hey, even High Republic fans.
Dude, they really like, I mean, they had like so many like kind of just deep cuts that like, and what I love about this show, we've talked about it before, is that you don't have to have watched Star Wars at all. You could have seen no Star Wars, watched the show and had a really emotional response to it, really enjoyed it, really got into it. And they were able to weave it in such a way though that like there was these little Easter eggs, these little connections for those fans who do like really love the whole saga and are really into it, get that extra enrichment, which is what I feel like is when Star Wars is at its best. It's not fan service that's like over the top, hitting you over the head. It's like, this is for everyone to enjoy, but for those diehard fans, here are little nuggets that like only you're going to pick up on that will make it a little bit nicer and more fun for you, but like are essential to understanding of the whole thing.
And I think it's hard to do. And I do think I think it's okay when sometimes you do need to kind of do your homework to understand something.
Yeah.
That should be for the things that are less like the main flagpoles. Because I'll give an example. We haven't gotten to an episode about this. We will soon. Forgive very brief spoilers for the very start of Tales of the Underworld. But the first like minute or two of Tales of the Underworld is this scene that, and I experienced this because I watched it with my partner Mary, if you have read the book Dark Disciple, hits you like a freight train.
Yep.
And if you haven't read that book, you have literally no idea what's going on.
Yep.
Mary was so confused. She was like, who are these people? Why do I care? Is that Asajj Ventress? I don't get it. Why is she like... And I don't think that's bad. I think for something like Tales of the Empire, they were like, look, you book readers, this is for you. And we're kind of saying to hell with everyone else. And as a book reader, I was okay with that. Because it's a small little, once a year project. For something like this, I think you're right. They needed to make it much broader. And they just did a phenomenal job at that.
I agree. Yeah. And also, Matthew, when I saw that celebration, that episode, you could tell who had read the book and who didn't, because there was a bunch of like, huh, what? And other people were like crying, and they're like, oh no.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think that like in my closing remark here, I think that we're gonna get into much deeper when we get Aaron back. But I remember before we did an Andor primer, Matthew had said that like, rightfully so, especially after like Daredevil and other like flops, that they were a little worried about, can this live up to season 1? And I was also like, I don't know, can this live up to season 1? And it did it somehow. Is it even better than season 1? It actually might be for me. Like I didn't think it was possible for them to get even better. And I think this is what happens when you go into a show with a plan. They're like, from the beginning, this is going to be 2 seasons. This is our plan. We know what we're doing. Unlike, with the sequel trilogy where they kind of bounced around a little bit with like what their plan was going to be. And they executed it in such an amazing way. Everything from acting, CGI, storytelling across the board. To me, this is not only the best Star Wars show, but one of the best TV shows I've ever seen in my life. And I'm really hoping that this level of standard that they have now set the bar is followed through on in future Star Wars projects, because we now know what they're capable of doing. If this is what they can produce, we should be getting other shows of this high quality in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think this is like it's weird to me trying to compare season 1 and season 2 because they all
Right.
it feels like such a full complete story. Um but certainly like having watched this now, when it comes to sequels, I am newly hopeful. I have a new hope about second seasons matching up to the first because you're not even laughing at my Star Wars reference. That's annoying. But
I'm sorry.
it's okay. It was terrible. But yeah, no, it absolutely cleared the bar. It was so much better than I feared. Like, not even than I feared. I was really looking forward to it. I was hopeful, but it matched those. It did not fail to do that. And I do think, like, I think there's a lot of stuff now that is comparing this to other stuff. And, like,
Sure.
all of a sudden that everyone loves Tony Gilroy, there's been some like dissatisfaction with Filoni growing for a while, but there's a whole bunch of people who are like, screw Filoni. It should only be Gilroy who can make everything again. And like, there's a lot of stuff that I think has come out of Disney Plus recently that is not on the same level of quality of this, and it shouldn't be.
Right.
And I don't want it, and I think I'm okay with that. There's a steak restaurant here in town that when I want to go and spend a huge amount of money and get a really wonderful fine dining experience,
Is it Manny's?
incredible food, it's very, very good. When I want to go have a burger, though, like sometimes I just want a burger, and the best burger in the world is exactly what's going to do it for me. And like, yeah, steakhouses are great. Blue Door is great.
Wait, what's the steakhouse? Is it Manny's?
I'm not going to get into that now. But like, yeah, it's just it's different things, Like, I don't want the best ice cream in the world to be the best, on the same level as like a super fancy French souffle. Like, it's different.
That's
things.
really fair. That's a fair way of putting it. And I don't need everything to be like this level, like this insane and like, sorry, I don't need everything to be this like cinematic level of perfection, but just like the writing, the acting, all of these things. Like, there's just a bar that's been set. I feel like that's gonna be like. Again, I've loved all the Star Wars shows, but like you compare this to some of the other ones, and like this is just elevated across the board.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
So I'm just curious to see, like, I mean, the next show we're getting is going to be the Mall animated show, but I don't. Whatever the next live action show is, I'll be very curious to see what kind of follows this one.
I thought Skeleton Crew was wonderful candy.
I agree.
It's not gonna last with me. I thought Rebels and Clone Wars helped make the rest of Star Wars good.
Yep.
And better, and a lot of it already was good. But I love them for that. I think this is one of the most important works of media in the last 30 years.
Yep.
And one of the best that I've ever seen. And for a while I would talk about like, if you're going to talk to me about the corruption of city government and the police and criminals and all these things, unless you've watched The Wire, I'm kind of not going to take you seriously because I think it is so insightful. And I think this show is kind of the same thing. Like, if you want to be speaking out about fascism and how do we fight it and how do we fall into it and what's happening in this country and what's happening in this world, watch this show. Because it's about all of that, and there's so much insights and raises so many questions that I don't know the answer to, but I want I think it was the mayor of Reykjavik in Iceland who said that he would not hire anyone in his city government unless they had watched The Wire. And I kind of want to feel the same thing. Like, if you're going to run for president, if you're going to be a leader in the Democratic Party and you understand how to fight fascism and authoritarianism without falling into the stupid traps that so many Democrats have, watch this show.
Watch the show. Watch. It's just anyone, just tell your friends, just watch this show.
Yeah.
And period, honestly, Matthew. It's just,
That's so good.
I'm just happy this exists. And I sent Aaron and Matthew a meme last night of Anakin saying, "I want more, and I know I shouldn't because it was perfect as it was. But I wish somehow there could be more because it was
I
just
know.
so good. But I also don't want more. It's like that weird feeling of like I don't want it to be over, but it's so exactly as it's supposed to be. It's so perfect as it was that I know I need to just be satisfied.
I mean, I put this on the same level as The Wire, which I think is just one of the best works of art, ever created. And the fifth season's kind of bad because it did go on too long, and it did have a lot of its funding pulled, and it went through some
Yeah.
bad stuff. And I'm kind of glad that Gilroy never had to deal with that. So,
Yep.
all right,
No,
well,
no one has reached their limit.
Alex, this is great. Members, I promise we're going to get back to giving you the bonus content soon. This has just been such a crazy schedule. We're trying to turn these out as fast as we can. But Alex, thank you so much. We'll have Aaron on to talk more soon. We'll have a lot of other great people. We will be talking a lot about Andor for a long time because
Yes.
this is, I think we're going to talk about Star Wars, BA and AA, before Andor and after Andor because it's changed everything. Alex, thank you so much to our listeners, our members. Thank you all so much. May the force be with you.
Stay classy, Canary.